For all of you who listen to Submersion and own an Android device, go to the Google Play Store and download the Podcast Republic app. It's a fantastic app that allows you to get all of your favorite podcasts directly on your Android device. I personally use the app and I love it. I can search for the podcast I want to listen to, select it as a favorite, and have it just a click away. Make sure you select Submersion as a favorite so you don't miss any of our new episodes every Thursday. Again, the app is the Podcast Republic app, available on Android devices.
Episode 103.
Woo!
103. Do we have a format? Do we just say 103 or do we say like 103, 103?
What do they say if you had a submarine that was like 103? Because they each have a number, right? Like 629.
Right, yeah.
Oh,
How do they
yes.
say it?
Think of
U571.
U571.
Yeah.
You know?
So
Yeah.
103, we think? Episode 103?
And he said 103. I think I'm good with that. I took one of those DISC personality tests, and I'm compliant. That means I will comply. I just need the rationale. I think we got it.
You took a personality test?
Yeah, for work. You never
You had to take one for work?
Yeah, you've never done like a DISC analysis or anything like that?
Nah.
It's pretty
I have not
it's
either.
pretty common stuff. I don't like believe in it necessarily. I feel like you're going to get a lot more using your intuition when engaging with someone. But yeah, I got there's 4 different categories you fall into: D, I, S, or C. D is like dominant, I is influencer, S is steady, and C is compliant. And I am a CS.
Oh, what about O? O is ointment.
O is ointment. That is
I
a
fall into
person
that
that is
category.
very topical in social situations. But I am compliant and steady.
Okay.
If I walked into the interview and I was shirtless with gleaming abs, would I guess dominant? D?
Oh yeah, and DI probably influence. You're going to influence them to your will because
That's
they're
true.
Gonna, yeah, they're going to see those abs and
think
they're just
so?
going to listen to everything that pours out of your mouth.
Yeah, exactly.
Or they just changed the I from influencer to intimidator.
So everything that pours out of mouth, you mean all the mashed potatoes on me? It's falling out of my mouth?
That's a bold strategy.
Wow. I like shirtless, mashed potatoes in the mouth, just ready to roll.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before we get the sirens blaring here, we are back with week 3 of the Post-Apocalyptic Movie Month. So we want to keep people on their toes for what to watch for next week. So next week, if you want to join and join the conversation, share some questions, be sure to watch On the Beach, the 2000 TV movie edition. It is available on YouTube out there. And
Somehow even longer than the version we watched this week.
hey, that's for after the sirens. So we got to talk about something else to get the sirens to come back in here.
Okay.
We got
Anything
a conventional
anything
3-man
going
crew
on with
back.
anyone lately in quarantine life? Anybody been doing anything interesting, fun? What's been going on?
No, I mean, I'm for the still foreseeable future. I got an email today saying you're still working at home. So that was nice to see.
I've been back in the office now for 2 weeks, back to a full 40. We had a little bit of a furlough there as everybody kind of slowed down. We work with hospitals and education, and those groups were either shut down or preoccupied. So it made sense that we had to kind of reciprocate and slow down a little bit. And but we're ramping back up and back to the work life.
There you go.
I've been playing a lot of Retro Bowl on my phone. It's a game that Zach the Gruesome Twosome Zach shared with me. Very fun little app I've been playing. Not a sponsor, but it could be.
It's
like Tecmo Bowl.
I just started War and Peace. I'm reading that now because like so much time in the house.
Very good. And as
That's
you can
exciting,
deduce,
Jamie. Good for you, man.
Yeah.
as you can
150 pages
deduce,
in.
we've got Jamie, Kyle, and myself tonight. So we are back to our super team of the Trusty Trio. Jamie and I were talking about it before the podcast. Our first appearance was episode 13. Well, we're all back together for 103.
Wait, really? 13 was the first time it was just us three.
That's correct. That which movie it was?
And you came in when? Like episode, when was
8
that
or 9.
Black Sea
I was
debacle?
gonna say 8 or 9.
Yeah, I did we did an unofficial recording on 8. I watched Black Sea, but that one never made it to air. So
Was it K-19? Was that the first one?
Yes, that's correct.
I feel like 13, I even remember that. I remember that one.
13 was...
Because you're like, who the hell is this guy?
Who is this soulmate that's going to be the co-host with me and Patrick when we start our Twin Immersion podcast? All
Twin
movies
Immersion.
about twins.
Oh.
Dive!
What began as an innocent conversation among friends would soon spiral out of control and later be referred to by future generations as the eighth wonder of the modern world. Mac East Studios takes you on the journey of your lifetime as your captains Alex the Mustard Man, the artist formerly known as Brom, Jamie the Ointment, Kyle El Capitan, and Zach the Backbone present Submersion.
Very good.
Just didn't wanna
Firing all
give,
cylinders there.
Yeah.
There we are. Good. I didn't want to give away too much, Jamie, with the future shows that we're going to be rolling out here,
Yeah. Well, twins are everywhere if you keep your eye out for them.
Twins.
Speaking of twins,
twins.
Mary Kate Olsen announced, I think today or yesterday, she's filing for divorce from her French husband of 5 years.
It's back on the market.
Back on the market. If you are interested in the original twins, the Olsens, Mary Kate is back on the market. But we were just mentioning, Kyle, do you remember what episode 13 would have been when we had this trio for the first time?
13, huh? So the Abyss was 10. Stinger was... Oh, wait. Was that Destination Tokyo? No. What would that one have been?
You're on the right track because you've already said it. It's
You've
Stinger.
already said it.
Oh, it is Stinger? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Greatest movie we've ever
man.
watched. Still, I actually should run my algorithm again, see if all of a sudden we have a connection that's better than the one I had before. Probably not, because probably no one in that movie has acted again since then.
I was thinking about that movie the other day and how it was so bad. And then if I watch that movie, I don't know, 30 years from now and be like, oh, it couldn't have been that bad. I'll be like, yeah, it was really that bad. It's the worst thing I've ever seen.
For new listeners who have not started from scratch, Stinger was about scorpions, bioengineered bioweapons scorpions, mutant scorpions on a submarine.
Yeah. It's also the reason I don't give out zeros, because Stinger is the only zero. It's the worst. So,
Yep.
You listen to what Brom just said, the biomutated scorpions on a sub, how could you go wrong, right?
Oh, they went wrong.
They went very wrong. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Stinger. We're not rehashing history.
Nope. We're back. Like we mentioned, week 3 of Post-Apocalyptic Movie Month. Said next week, watch On the Beach. Well, this week, we watched the original On the Beach from 1959.
And I will say, fun fact, when I first mentioned to my family that I was doing a dumb podcast about submarine films, my dad was like, oh, you guys should watch On the Beach. It's one of my favorites.
That was a little fun factoid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised we have waited till this long. This is kind of right on the cusp of kind of a classic submarine movie. I guess it's kind of the submarine kind of takes a little bit of a back seat. It's not your conventional submarine combat movie, so maybe that's why it doesn't get referenced in all submarine circles. But
literally, it's the back seat of the car that the person drives around. Puts the submarine right back there.
Pretty well regarded film with a 7.2 on IMDb.
Yeah.
And 2 Oscar nominations for Best Film Editing and Best Music, and a Golden Globe win for Best Original Score.
I was a little surprised by that Oscar. Like, I know not the score I could see. The editing, I felt like at times it was a little choppy, but I think maybe it was just a style back then.
There were some things that, were a little odd, and we can get into those.
I would contend with the score a little bit. I loved. I mean, but it was one song. They just had one.
Yeah, it was just one thing over and over.
Yeah, the Waltzing Matilda song, which is I recognized from Civilization, Civ 6.
The only thing I will say is that this was a little, I think, a little ahead of its time. So probably at the time, a lot of this stuff was new and interesting. Like the editing, I'm sure, was
absolutely
pretty good. But like it being an apocalyptic film itself, I don't even know how many there would have been at that time that really dealt with the idea of an apocalypse. It's like 1950s. Like how many films are really even considering it? It became a much bigger thing with the nuclear bombs and stuff like that. But that wouldn't have happened. This was only, a decade after the end of World War II, when we used the nuclear bomb to like end the war. It's like 11 years later, there's a movie about nuclear bombs like ending the world. So it's a pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah, on the cautionary tale vibe of it all.
Yeah.
Yep. So 1959 film starring Gregory Peck as Dwight Lionel Towers, Ava Gardner as Maura Davison, Fred Astaire as Julian Osborne, Anthony Perkins as Lieutenant Peter Holmes, and Donna Anderson as Mary Holmes.
Ah, beautiful. Mary Holmes. Beautiful lady.
Definitely recognize Gregory Peck from To Kill a Mockingbird, and Anthony Perkins I recognized as the Psycho.
Yeah, from
Psycho.
and
Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho films.
And Fred Astaire is I thought he was incredible in this movie, and it's kind of funny this is his first non-musical role.
Yeah, he's typically a dancer and musician, right?
Yeah, I just felt like he was so expressive with his face. And I guess maybe that's years of kind of being that performer in that show. I mean, he was like a child star as well on vaudeville and stuff. So that I also thought Ava Gardner was incredible. I thought both of them were really, really good. Really well acted overall. But we can save that for later because
let's get into
probably get into it. Okay, so we open up and we're not on the beach yet. We are on a submarine, and we're getting some classic submarine action. I'm seeing this. They're doing, turn that knob, do this thing. They may as well have had a wrench and a fire going at that point, because they were basically, it seems like at that point that you're in the middle of a World War II film, because they're going up, they're checking stuff out, blah, blah, blah. But then it turns out that they're just heading into harbor at Melbourne. And at first, I actually honestly thought for a second, is this not an apocalyptic film? Because when you first are watching it, submarine cruising into Melbourne, a lighthouse keeper watches them go in, and I'm like, it doesn't seem like too many things are messed up. But pretty quickly, when we get into Melbourne, you start to see that things are a little messed up. All the streets are empty except for bicyclists and electric vehicles. They basically have run out of gas.
Horse and buggies as well.
Yeah, and they've run out of gas. And then a lot of the military is pretty ramshackle. So you have this American submarine come into port, but otherwise the Navy, you see there's like kind of a character who's made up just for the film, wasn't in the original novel, but kind of an admiral with a Osgood or something, his assistant. And they're kind of in like a state of disarray at all times, kind of just like wondering whether they should even be doing the work that they're doing, because what we come to learn is that nuclear bombs, there was a nuclear war. Pretty much the entire world was destroyed, except Australia wasn't involved. And so the radiation hasn't drifted to the southern hemisphere yet, or at least to that portion of the southern hemisphere. And so Australia literally is the only place left on Earth, as far as they know.
Does anybody know when the game Risk was invented? Because if I remember correctly, Australia is the place to have if you want to win. It's like unbeatable, right?
I don't remember.
I don't know. I thought that was Ukraine.
That.
Isn't the Ukraine strong? That's a joke
Sure.
from Seinfeld. The Risk. It's a Risk joke from Seinfeld. If Zach was here, he'd know what I was talking about. Anyways.
That cult classic show, as some article we were reading referred to it as.
Okay.
Like, what?
Anyways, we also get a sense that so there's Peter Holmes, and him and his wife are kind of living what would seem like an idyllic life. She's beautiful, he's handsome, they have a little baby. He's like
she's very beautiful.
feeding the baby. She's very beautiful.
She's like got a real timeless look to her. Like you could pluck her out and put her in the current era, and she'd look like a contemporary woman.
Yeah, I don't necessarily. I'm not sure because she didn't act for a super long time, so it's hard to necessarily get a sense of whether that was because she wasn't able to make it as an actress, or maybe she just decided to do other stuff or whatever. But yeah, she's striking, like really striking. And they seem to have a very idyllic life, but at the same time, he's in the Navy and has to kind of like make his way into Melbourne because he has a potential, he has a meeting to go to and stuff like that. And it's clear that his wife is struggling with the idea of what is happening, because really they know that even though they've been spared right now and everyone's kind of pretending like things are okay, that at some point the radiation will get down to Australia due to the current air currents and stuff like that, and everyone will die. And so they think they have like, what was it, 3 months or 5 months or something?
Mm-hmm. Like I said, it was about 5 months
6,
at this time.
Yeah. But they don't really know. Like some people are like, well, maybe it'll be less. And some people are like, well, maybe it won't ever come here. And some people are like, well, maybe it's already lifting elsewhere in the world, and all kinds of stuff like that. So she's not doing super great with that. And he's trying to be a little bit more realistic with it. And that kind of becomes the crux of the entire film, which is like their love story and kind of their life and how they're dealing with the apocalypse. At the same time, he goes into Melbourne and meets up with the admiral, and he's basically like, you're going to be a liaison on this submarine because we're going to send them out on a mission. We have this American submarine, but America is gone. And so they're going to help us out with this scientific mission that we're going to send them out on. And part of it's that they want to see if a theory that the radiation is lifting in certain places is true. They want to check out a major city, which is San Francisco, and see if there's any chance that anyone survived in certain areas. And then a third thing is that they have like they're hearing some Morse code from San Diego area. And while they don't think it's anyone because it doesn't make sense, like it's not actually Morse code, there's no words or anything like that being made, they have to check it out just because it's the only thing they can hear, like in the entire world. So they're going to send the submarine out on this, and they're going to use Peter as kind of their emissary on this to just kind of integrate everyone into the Australian Navy. He's going to be the liaison. So he goes on and meets the captain, played by Gregory Peck, Dwight Towers, and almost immediately he's a little bit of a strange guy. He's also not dealing with the situation very well because his family died. It's interesting because he goes into more detail later as to exactly why this is, but it's a very submarine-centric reason that he's struggling in the end. Because we hear in these movies and stuff like that, this idea that you go out and, military families, I guess we just saw it in The Command, right? Kind of a sense that if you go out on these missions and stuff like that, there's a chance you won't come back. And the family back home has to like deal with this mental stress of that idea. All of a sudden, and that's in his mind, he was like, I would be the one that died. But instead, it was his wife and 2 kids who died, and he was the one who was saved. And so it's kind of this reversal of the normal thing that is totally broken him in a lot of ways. He's not like really functioning. He can only function through his work. So anyways, Peter...
Well, he's handling it pretty well, Jamie. He's taking the, I'm not going to believe that they're dead approach,
Yeah, that's a good one. So
that's the best way to handle it.
What is
right?
that? So he's proceeded from stage 0 to stage 1 of grief.
Yes.
Good. Like that's a baby step to that. But anyways, like Peter takes a shine to him, thinks he's a pretty good guy, and invites him over to a party. They decide, we're going to have a party. I'm going out on this mission. It's going to be a while. I'm not sure what's going to happen while we're out there. It's going to be like 3 months, and who knows, maybe the radiation will come quicker or whatever. So they're going to have a party, and Peter's wife is like, Mary's like, no talk of what's going on. Just let's have it be fun, because otherwise I can't handle it. And also I can't handle if this goddamn sub-captain cries all over the place because his family's dead, and he sees our beautiful wife, a beautiful life, and your beautiful wife, and your beautiful baby, and starts like bawling his eyes out. And Peter's like, he won't. He seems like cool. Don't even worry about it. So anyways, they bring him out. They have their friend Moira show up, played by Ava Gardner, and she's like the town drunk. She's kind of also not handling. I mean, I guess in retrospect, everyone's not handling the apocalypse very well, which I guess is understandable. She's taken to drinking, and they meet up, and there's a pretty much instant chemistry. I mean, she is beautiful. She's kind of a mess, but she's like beautiful and very fun. And that's the thing. I think he's like this submarine captain who's kept everything really uptight, but with his family dead and stuff like that, he's like buried himself in his job, and all of a sudden there's this like spark of life in front of him who's kind of like throwing him a curveball. And so they're at the party, and they're having a good time. He's drinking like a fish, but Moira's like, it's amazing. He can drink so much. Look at that manly man. Can handle his liquor. But someone who can't handle liquor is a scientist named Julian, played by Fred Astaire. And he
is going on and just basically everybody's trying to relax. He's like, we're totally screwed. I helped build this bomb. This is it. This is the end, guys. He's like, why don't you just relax, man?
Yeah.
It's like, no, not a chance. We're all going to die. None of this matters. Let's just get drunk.
Right. And so Mary's not happy about that at all. Was like, fuck that.
She kind of freaks out.
Yeah.
There was something that was really funny, though, I thought, at the beginning of this party. There was just somebody, it was a real short scene, an older woman talking to one of the guests. She's like, yeah, my husband and I used to travel all over the place, and he'd always say, I'm an American, no matter where he went. I'm an American. I'm American. And finally, they shot him in the Middle East or something like that. Yeah. And I was like, okay, great.
Yeah.
It's just like a short scene, and I was like cracking up about it.
So anyways, the party disperses at the end, and the captain's going to stay there for the night. So is Moira. And they have a talk, and Moira's shit-faced. I mean, talk about some good acting. She does some great drunk acting, and she is shit-faced and basically like can't really even handle herself and asking a whole bunch of questions and stuff like that. And eventually just passes out in his arms.
Well, all right, let's get one thing straight here. She wants him right now.
I think she basically, I think there was an understanding, let's say, that she was supposed to be his date for the evening, and she was quite willing to be his date.
Oh, okay. An arranged date.
In some ways, yeah. But anyways, she passes out. He takes her to bed, wipes her face with a towel real quick. That's one scene that we get, but otherwise it's very gentlemanly.
That is an odd scene.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what everybody does, right? If you're putting somebody to bed, you're just like, hold on. Let
me wash your face.
Towel.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, good to go.
I mean, that's one thing you got to do. That's one thing I got to do before bed. Sometimes I might not be able to brush my teeth. I'm just too wasted or something, but you got to at least wash the face.
Yeah. You're just like, wow, I'm going to feel so good tomorrow morning.
Yeah. So as this is kind of going on, the next morning, she shows up at the submarine. Everyone's like, holy shit, look at that lady. She's some hot stuff. And we don't have hot stuff like that around the submarine very much. And she's like, where's the captain? And everyone's like, wait, this bunk. And they go get him. And they're like, there's a lady here for you. And she's banging. And the captain's like, I know who that is. I'm going to go check her out. So he heads to his bunk and is like,
check her out.
And it's like, you can't, I want to take you on a tour of the submarine, but you can't take a tour looking like that. And he says a bunch of funny jokes about like how good looking she is and how like everyone wants to bone her and stuff. And then he's like, put on this suit so that you can tour the submarine. And she comes out and she sees Julian, the drunk scientist there too. I was like, what are you doing here? It's like, well, I'm also going on the mission because they need a scientist to do some measurements and stuff like that. So I'm going along. And they kind of like go back and forth a little bit. And before the mission goes off, we get a bunch of scenes of them growing closer and closer, Moira and the captain, as they go out sailing. And she's like real, I don't know, fun and flirty. She's like purposely capsizing the boat just for funsies to get them in the ocean. And they like wrestle on the sand. Sounds like a good old time, right? But even
then things take a turn, don't they?
Yeah, even Peter and Mary are looking at them and they're acting like kids. And Mary's like, you don't wrestle me anymore. So they seem like young loves, kind of like youngsters just like living their life and in love. And then all of a sudden he calls her by his dead wife's name, and everyone's like, oh shit. I was like, man, you guys, no one could play it cool. Because I feel like there's a way to not be so awkward.
Everybody just like sort of looking down. They're like, oh,
they're like, holy
goodness,
shit,
man. Dude, what did you just do? And for a second, it happened so fast that I had to like I'm like, what, did something like catastrophic just happen? And I was like, oh, okay, he just called her Sharon. And I was like, oh, he called her Sharon, man.
Yeah.
You don't do that.
Right. So that kind of like puts a bit of a monkey wrench into their relationship for the time being. Peter, before he goes off, he's mostly fretting about the idea that he would leave and the radiation may come early. So he wants to get some suicide pills because they're going to be distributing pills so people don't go through like the sickness and kind of like die a long, painful death. And so like they're going to get out suicide pills. And he's trying to get some early for his wife and kid just in case. And Mary is basically delusional at this point and kind of like, no, I don't want to listen to you. You're a murderer. You want me to kill our child and stuff like that. And he's very emotional, kind of being like, what am I supposed to be? This is what I need to do. And this is what I'm supposed to do. And yet it's like, it makes me feel like a monster. Like, what am I supposed to do? And so
well,
it's
would.
like
I mean, it's like it's a pretty big dilemma, right?
It's a very
you'd have to deal
emotional
with.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was sitting there watching this, I was like, my God.
Yeah.
You know, like I've got a kid. Like if you ever have to go through something like this, that'd be the toughest thing you'd ever have to do.
Not the most typical storyline for our submarine films that we watch.
Or a movie from the 50s. But
right,
whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, just before they're about to leave, Mary she goes to talk to Julian, and he kind of reveals that basically they're about to head out. They're heading out like literally the next morning because Moira Moira goes and sees Julian, and she kind of just wants someone at that moment to love and be with and stuff like that. And Julian's like, I'm sorry, I can't. But yeah, we're leaving. And unfortunately that means that the captain didn't let you know that he was going.
Yeah. But one thing that's very important here, she finds Julian in his garage working on a Ferrari that he has just purchased.
A Ferrari Spyder, in fact.
Yes.
Very, very, that type of car, I think, goes for millions of dollars. If you had one of those cars, you could sell it for several $1 million.
We'll talk about it later.
Yeah. And so anyway,
Ferrari Spyders worldwide.
Yeah. And so anyways, they head off on their scientific voyage at this point. They head up first to the Arctic, where they do some measurements, and basically the theory that it's dissipating up north as it heads south is just not true. It is very high levels of radiation, and that's not going to work out. That's the first place they go. Then they head over to San Francisco, and basically they look, and it is a disaster area. I mean, no one's around. Golden Gate Bridge is empty. They look on the main street of San Francisco. No one's over there. They're wondering even where the people are. Like, if everyone is dying, shouldn't there be dead bodies everywhere? But it seems like the idea is like everyone kind of retreated to their homes to die. And so they take turns looking, and then there's one guy on the submarine who his family lived in San Francisco, and he's like, I want to take a look. And he goes and takes a look and is so distraught that he basically jumps out of the submarine, escapes, and swims out there. And they're kind of calling to him, and they're asking him like to come back, and how long can he be out there? He can only be out there an hour and stuff like that. And eventually it's just like, he's clearly not going to come back. They find him fishing the next morning. They talk to him through an intercom, and he's basically like, not feeling so hot, but I'll see you. I mean, basically like, I'm good to go here. It's fine. My family's dead. I found them. They're not alive. And this is where I'm going to die. And they're like, okay. And they leave him.
Well, I did make a pretty good joke or whatever. They're like, well, if you don't feel well, he's like, if I don't feel well, he's like, don't worry. There's like 3,500 pharmacies I can hit.
Right. Yeah. Like he's going to find something to take to kill himself. So then they head down to San Diego for the last thing, like basically to see if there's any reason to check out or be concerned with that Morse code. They send someone out. He's in a big suit. He's only got an hour, so they're going to let him know every 15 minutes that passes, so that he can run back to the submarine.
Did you notice what he used when he was exiting the submarine and flooding the hatch? He banged with on the side. Oh yeah, it was a wrench.
Yeah,
obviously. Banged on the side. I was like, clutch, dude. They know what's going on here.
Yeah. And he runs up there. He runs into a power plant because part of it was that it had to have been coming from a power plant. It had to be a hydroelectric because otherwise the entire grid was out other than the hydroelectric. So he runs in. He finds the room where it's coming from. And there's basically just a happenstance, a Coke bottle fell over and was attached or got wrapped up in the windows, a window blind string, and started tapping on a Morse code thing. So I guess the idea is basically like, given how many places in the world that have Morse code machines and stuff like that, one of them had this accident that was able to give out a random signal. So he closes that off. He basically gets rid of it, and he shuts down the hydroelectric plant because it's gonna probably break anyways. Shuts it down and goes back to the submarine.
One of the things that I don't know if we even mentioned earlier is this Morse code signal was very broken and not clear at all. And that's what they kept, mentioning, like, wow, whoever did this needs to go to Morse code school or whatever, because it was so broken. And we find this out. So it makes sense.
Yeah. So then they return to Australia, and basically, it was a complete failure, the mission. So what we end up seeing at the end is them, and the main idea of the film, which is kind of like life and love and how it is that you would want to live at the end. So you have the captain who is very resistant and had all these issues with his family and stuff like that, kind of come back and be like, I don't care anymore. Like, I just want to be with you, Tamora. And they start living a happy life together, kind of leading to the end.
And he makes this ridiculous quote that I was like, wait a minute, did he just say that? He walks up to Mora and he's like, is my invitation to spread fertilizer still valid?
That's so weird.
It's like, whoa.
Yeah. Was that actually a euphemism? Like, it's so weird.
Classic pickup line.
Yeah. And then
she's like, duh, of course it is.
Yeah. And then Julian, he actually does enter the race, the Australian Grand Prix. And this was probably, I don't want to say, like, it's fun to have like a fun sports thing in the middle of it, but like probably the worst part of the movie, just from like a quality point of view and stuff like that. It really looks pretty rough. Not realistic at all, unfortunately.
The scenes especially of him head on driving the car.
So I guess that's a good caveat.
The other stuff, like where he's like cars are rolling and all that. Yeah. I mean, that looks good, but
that was fun. Do you think that was models? I couldn't actually, because it seemed like it had been very dangerous. Do you think they were just empty cars?
There's some stuff that if that was real, like if there was someone in that car, I mean, they're dead. Like the car blows up.
I was reading an article, and I can get to it later, but it talks about
what they did.
Okay. You can save that for later then.
Yeah.
I didn't mind it as much because I kind of liked, I think they were playing it that he was willing to die out there.
Right, exactly.
Like
he was very calm.
This was how his
all
exit
the
was
racers
going to
were.
be. Yeah.
Well, that was the thing you got from the sense of the head on, is that it was almost like he was driving down the street to get some milk from the grocery store or something. Like he was just very calm as like cars were exploding all around him and stuff like that. It just is. It's tough. It's one of those things that for older films, sometimes you have these scenes that just don't look the way that you expect.
Just from a visual standpoint, obviously it fell short. But I actually like the scene, and he actually wins the race, and he doesn't even. It takes him a while to smile, like because it's almost like he didn't think he was going to win and planned to die out there.
Yeah.
Well, you thought he was going to lose. Yeah. I mean, quite a bit. As soon as like they're out of the gate, he almost like gets off the road and kind of gets spun around, but then. You're like, wow, maybe he's not that good. And then everybody's spinning around, blowing up, catching fire. You're like, well, I guess Julian's doing better than them, I guess.
That's a good point, Brum. I guess I didn't really think about it that way. This idea that this was his way of suicide, and yet it failed and he won the race.
Yeah. I think that was the whole point because, he won and he didn't even smile until like 10 seconds later. You're like, well, okay, I'll take what I got here. And he starts to crack a smile.
I guess what I would have liked then is that at the end of the movie, he drives a car and explodes.
Well, he's still in it. He's still in his car when he goes.
Yeah. I guess I would have liked them to complete that circle if that was the point for him to then die in like a fiery crash. But, so anyways.
One of my favorite parts in this scene though is our sub-captain is there. Full uniform the whole time. You're like, what's going on here? He is not going to break character.
Yeah. So then,
and at this,
We go on a fishing. Are you talking about? Yeah, they go on a fishing trip.
I was going to
together.
say, yeah, at this point, he's like, hey, by the way, I heard the fishing opener is a couple days early. Let's go to the mountains with me and 10,000 of my closest friends.
Yeah. I actually, and I will say this scene, while at times annoying because of all the singing that went on.
Oh my gosh,
I do think
so
it was
long.
It was a really beautiful, and I guess the end of the movie as a whole, especially given the fact that I guess I was distracted during the racing scene. The more that I'm thinking about what Brom said, the more I'm liking that racing scene. Then you get this fishing scene, which is really beautiful. It's kind of this really annoying thing. There's people everywhere, and there's these I don't even know how to say that, an a cappella group. No,
Yeah.
drunkards singing a drinking song, Waltzing Matilda. And they just keep on singing it over and over and over again. They're singing it at the watering hole, but then back at the hotel, they're just singing it. And it seems like it's ruining everything. It's super rainy there, stormy there. People are everywhere. There's this annoying song going on. But them being together, slowly all of this morphs into this beautiful a cappella version of the song that you clearly see, like it's supposed to be symbolizing how, like, even in this just like everything shit, the beauty of them being together in that moment creates a romantic atmosphere in what is otherwise a totally not romantic atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. And the camera goes into bullet time. Did you notice that? Yeah,
No, I didn't.
They had it. They had to have had it on like a rail or something. It goes in like a perfect slow motion circle that wraps around Gregory Peck and Ava Gardner as they embrace and then kiss.
Yeah. So
Smoochy.
The birth
that
of
was really
bullet time.
beautiful.
It was
Oh,
really
we're
cool.
good.
We're close. Yeah, we're real close.
Yeah. So then at this point, everyone is starting to develop some radiation sickness. You see the first people start to do that. There's like a bunch of kind of rallies in Melbourne, kind of being like, hey, life goes on. Like, love is like, there's still time. Let's like have like life or whatever. And
A lot
all
of
that
fine.
kind of
There's
stuff.
like the fine God stuff. There's still time, brother.
Yeah.
I think that was to like get people to find salvation with Christianity.
Yeah.
I thought that was like a Hulk Hogan tribute or something.
True.
Still time, bro.
Find Jesus, brother.
And so, yeah, but then you're also seeing everyone line up for their suicide pills. You're seeing Julian kill himself by carbon monoxide poisoning. And Mary has gone into a bit of she has pretty deep radiation sickness. And she's gone into more like a comatose state of sorts. And Peter goes up to her and is kind of trying to snap her out of it. And they have one final lucid moment together, kind of describing what is the title of the movie, which is, remember when we first met, when I first saw you on the beach, you were so beautiful, and all this stuff about like the love that they had, kind of this last moment together before they all end up taking the suicide pills and killing themselves. And then finally, the last part of it is the captain is with Moira, but informs her that they took a vote, and the crew wants to try to make it back to die in America. They don't want to. They would like to try and attempt to make it all the way back, and it's probably not going to happen, but they're going to try. And so, unfortunately, he's going to have to leave her. So he gets on the submarine. It kind of sails off. She drives up to the cliffs to watch it leave, and as it leaves, she kills herself. Right?
I think it just gets.
No.
I think it just rolls. It just rolls.
Well,
Yep.
presumably, she eventually dies.
Her watching the sub go off into the sunset.
And the last scenes of the movie are the empty streets of Melbourne, as everyone has died. So overall, an uplifting film.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Especially
Had that in
time
my
of a
notes.
global pandemic.
And then at the last moment, you see a mutant emerge from the sewers.
You're like, oh,
And you're
yeah.
like, oh shit, the sequel on the beach too.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
That's on the beach.
That's on the beach. Classic. Who wants to go first in terms of reviewing it, giving their review?
I can go first.
There he goes.
Do it.
All right. I know we've held off on this movie for a while for whatever reason, and I'm glad that we finally got to it. This movie, absolutely shocked me. I did not expect this movie to be as good as it is, especially because I saw it didn't do particularly well at the box office, lost a bunch of money, but great acting by everybody in the film. Visually, less the parts that we talked about with the head-on racing scene. One particular shot at the end I was not a fan of was when the...
Oh.
Huh?
Nope, go ahead.
It was when the sub was sailing off and Gregory Peck was standing on top of it. And there was clearly just... They took a shot of him standing on the sub when it wasn't moving. I was like, okay, whatever, guys. But there was that. I liked the desolate streets of San Francisco. I thought that was really great. And then when I was watching it, I just kept thinking, I don't know. I was putting myself in the situation of our lieutenant, you know, because I'm a married man with a kid. I was like, my God, that's difficult. How do you deal with that? And I don't know. For whatever reason, this movie struck a chord with me. And I kept thinking if they remade this movie today, how it could be done. I think it would be much more gritty, probably a little bit more, see a lot more corpses, make it more visceral. But
I guess,
anyway,
I guess we'll find out. 2000.
Yeah. What comes to mind is Chernobyl, which I've recently watched and really enjoy. But man, this movie I think is great. I would recommend this to anybody. Even if you don't like black and white films, get over it. Go watch this movie. I'm giving it an 8.
It's a good score.
Nice. It's a good score.
Yeah, I think I'll hop in here. I mean, you described it perfectly by saying, you know, you were surprised that it did so poorly at the box office. I mean, that's evident that this was way ahead of its time. I think we've talked in previous episodes how there was always this thought that the movies, you know, need that hit the theaters need to be uplifting and poignant, and this one really broached those dark themes and the melancholy of facing an impending apocalypse. And sure enough, yeah, it performed poorly at the box office, and now I think there's a lot of respect for it now after the fact. It was slow moving. In fact, I was not on board with this movie for really the first half. Like I was really struggling to keep my eyes on the screen. I think it caught its stride though around the point where Peter acquired the suicide pills, because I could see the movie was going in a direction we hadn't seen for some of these, you know, old black and white submarine movies that we've watched. And the cinematography was incredible throughout, as you were alluding to. And as I mentioned, there's like that bullet time, you know, kissing scene, which we had never seen anything like that in any of these other movies we've watched. And I wouldn't be shocked if it's not out there. I mean, this might have been the first time we've ever seen kind of that 360-degree camera with that a cappella music playing in the background. It was like starting to really deliver a strong, you know, romance and story, gripping story, where you started to care about the characters, just as they are starting to come to grips with, again, the melancholy of their impending death. And I also love the shot of the pool table with the bar proprietor when the bar emptied out and now there's nobody left in the bar, and he sets the empty tray with the glass of wine on the table, and he goes and finishes someone else's pool game that they had started, and that shot looks incredible. And sure enough, I hadn't pulled up the IMDb page until tonight. It's actually the first photo. If you go to IMDb, you can see a still of that shot. It's a pretty powerful scene and image. So yeah, it started slow. But really, the second half of the movie is very strong, and I think Fred Astaire's character was my favorite sort of story arc with the car. It introduces the car that he obviously has his pride and joy, but you kind of wonder all along if this was always his intent to die in the car. And when he won the race and was kind of disappointed, he ultimately kills himself. He gets once he checks the radiation levels and confirms, like, yep, it's here and it's only a matter of time now. He grabs towels and he plugs every little air hole in his barn doors there, and hops in his car, starts it up, and lays his head back. I thought that was unbelievable. Like, I couldn't believe I was seeing that in a movie from the 50s. So
I know, it's shocking, the things that they were doing back
It really
then.
is. I mean, it's kind of crazy too, because like, even the 60s weren't necessarily known for super subversive stuff. But I mean, this is 5 years before Doctor Strangelove, and like it's like at least 5 years ahead of its time in terms of subject matter and how it's portraying stuff and stuff. It's pretty amazing. I mean, I guess it is based on a book.
True. And Brom, you're talking about the shots and visually. I feel like we had a good claustrophobic feel inside that submarine. And for being back in the 50s, you know, it's not like you've got tiny cameras like GoPros and stuff where you can film professional footage like that. I mean, it was very well done.
Yeah, and this one, you know, kind of unfortunately for our podcast, it really kind of transcended the submarine. And I wish the submarine could have had a better role and bigger role to play in the film. But
I think it could have, and it's interesting too, because I think a part of it is being restricted by the book a little bit. I mean, I know even the author didn't love kind of the changes that were made for the film, and I think in the book it's maybe even less so. Like, there's no submarine at the end of the book or anything like that. The submarine really just plays a role in the beginning and then in the middle, and that's it. So it's not as central, but you could have imagined there being kind of this idea of prolonging life by going underwater in the submarine with Moira and going off. That could have been how they ended it. But no, I mean, it is still a pretty small portion of the film, the submarine portion. Mm-hmm. Yeah, relatively speaking. All right, well, I can jump in.
Well, let me give it.
He's got to give his rating.
Oh, shit, sorry.
Keep it very concise. Very solid entry. I'm going to give it a 7.
Whoa, really? I feel like tough grader.
I dropped it about a half point there for the lack of. This isn't a full, you know, classic submarine film. It's got submarines in it. It's not a submarine film.
Well, I'm going to come in the highest. I love this film. I think it's a beautiful film. I think particularly the ending of it is just a really beautiful message and kind of what you get from what is otherwise a very bleak ending about love and life and how to live life, and kind of the realization only when you're faced with the ultimate demise for the captain and everyone, just what is beautiful about life and what's worth living for and stuff like that. It's a really powerful message we don't get from a lot of the films that we get to watch from in Submersion. Really enjoyed it. I even enjoyed the submarine portions of it, as Kyle said. Like, it looked good. Like, the submarine stuff looked good. Like, when we opened on the submarine, I was like, man, even though this is only 5 seconds of this movie, it's like they're filming it like this is Run Silent, Run Deep. We're on the submarine the entire time. Like, they're taking their effort for this portion as well. I enjoyed a lot of the visuals of the empty cities, and particularly Melbourne with the people riding bikes and stuff like that. Just amazing to see something in 1959, filmed in 1959, where you have something like that where you're just like, you almost forget. I mean, I guess because it's from so long ago, you assume everything was just like by candlelight or something like that. But you look at this and you're like, wow, they really knew what they were up to. Movies were way better and way more advanced than maybe are given credit, because you could make something like this. Like, they were able to create this. So really enjoyed it. Thought the acting was amazing as well. Ava Gardner, loved her. Really beautiful and really great in this movie. Gregory Peck was great. I thought Fred Astaire was amazing. So I just really enjoyed it. I think I would have given it a 10. It is a little lacking on the submarine of it, so I'm going to drop it down. Similar to Enemy Below. I think that was another one that I just really enjoyed and thought was a really great movie. Just not a lot of submarine in Enemy Below, or not as much submarine in Enemy Below. Or at least not the main portion of that movie. So I dropped it down to a 9.5. I'm going to drop this down to a 9.5.
Wow, very respectable score. If you think I'm a tough grader, what do you think Zach would have gave this?
I think it depends. One thing is yeah. So I guess I don't know what Zach would give it. I don't want to say like, oh, Zach, just like schlock probably would give it like a 5.
No, I'm not making fun of Zach. I just know he doesn't give it much time before it's like, we're watching this sucker at 16 times speed, baby. And it took about half the movie for me to get fully invested in it. So I don't know. I see him going pretty low on this one.
Yeah, but I bet the other half of the gruesome twosome Alex, I bet he would have liked this movie. That's my guess.
Well, we'll have to see if they'll revisit it with a macro pod.
Yeah. Dun dun dun. Or just with next week's even longer version of the movie.
That's true. Yeah, it's too bad if that's the only version they get to see is the miniseries.
It's got a comparable rating on IMDb. I think the TV one has a 7.0 and this one had a 7.2. So I hope for the best.
But there's not that many ratings on it, I don't think, are there?
Oh, yeah, it could be.
All right. Yeah. Should I get into some
we'll
trivia?
We'll bump that up.
Trivia time?
Go ahead.
Yeah, let's do some trivia, man.
Movie was filmed in 1959. At the time of filming, the U.S. only had 49 states, which only lasted for 1 year, July 4th, 1959 to July 4th, 1960. The United States had 49 states. Before that, it was 48. After that, 50. And so you can actually see a 49-star flag flying from the submarine in this movie. What was the 50th state?
Hawaii?
Good one, Kyle. It was Hawaii.
I was going to guess Hawaii or Alaska.
It is, yeah, but yeah, Alaska was 49, then Hawaii came in at number 50. The U.S. Department of Defense and the United States Navy declined to cooperate in the production of this film, including access to a nuclear-powered submarine, which forced the film production to use a non-nuclear diesel-electric Royal Navy submarine, HMS Andrew. They were based in Australia until 1967, when the Royal Australian Navy commissioned its own submarine. So the only nuclear submarine, so on the hull, it actually was designated 623, was painted on there. The only U.S. nuclear submarine with the hull 623 was the SSBN Nathan Hale, a ballistic missile submarine of the Lafayette class. So Nathan Hale was an American spy in the Revolutionary War who was hung by the British upon capture. He was named the official hero of what state in 1985? The Revolutionary War. What state was Nathan Hale from?
I would think like Massachusetts or something.
It's a good
one. The
one.
official hero of Massachusetts. Do you know how many heroes Massachusetts has?
Get out
of here. Tom Brady.
Gotta go a little more vague. I'm gonna go with New Hampshire.
No, sorry. Close though. Since it's all New England. No.
Connecticut?
It's Connecticut. It is Connecticut. He has a bunch of statues in Connecticut because he was from Connecticut. It's actually kind of an interesting story if you read about him, because he basically became a spy and like worked in intelligence for a little bit in the Revolutionary War. He went to become a spy and like literally 14 days later was caught and hung. So he was like, I'm going to infiltrate.
Not a great spy, huh?
It didn't work out super great. I will say that.
Yeah.
The film had its world premiere on December 17th, 1959 in more than 20 cities worldwide, including Moscow. It was the first time an American film had a premiere in the Soviet Union. The special premiere in Moscow was held at a workers' club with 1,200 Soviet dignitaries, the foreign press corps, and diplomats, including U.S. Ambassador Llewellyn Thompson. Gregory Peck and his wife traveled to the Soviet Union for the premiere. He was actually a noted pacifist. It also premiered in 18 cinemas across 7 continents on December 17th, 1959. It even included a screening at the Little America base in Antarctica. So, 1985, speaking of what I said about Nathan Hale, 1985 is also the year that What Sly Stallone film premiered and unofficially ended the Cold War. 1985 Sly Stallone film that unofficially ended the Cold War.
No, it's got to be the Rocky
First
with
Blood?
No, it's got to be Rocky.
Which one though? Yeah, which Rocky film?
Which one had Rocky 2?
You think Dolph Lundgren was in Rocky 2?
I didn't watch any of the Rocky movies.
That is a mistake. It's Rocky 4, and it is a classic.
Oh.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess 85. I feel like all the Rockies. Yeah, that would make sense. Because they weren't coming out in the 90s when I was alive, so that would make sense.
Right.
It's got to be kind of the end of the Rockies.
Neville Shute originally collaborated with Stanley Kramer on the film, but soon realized that many of his ideas were not being incorporated, so he distanced himself from the project. He was absolutely enraged by the final film. Some say that this hatred of the film contributed to a fatal stroke a month after the film's premiere, which is a bit of kind of a crazy thing that was listed on the IMDb trivia, that somehow this film contributed to the death of the author of the book. So I thought that was funny. That was listed. So the question is, he was an aeronautical engineer that headed the R100 project for Great Britain. The R100 and R101 were successfully built and used until the R101 crash. Now, it was a type of transport that had a crash in the same year that several other similar transport types had crashes, including the USS Acheron, and then a famous example as well in New Jersey. What type of transportation was it?
All right. It's a Zeppelin, not a blimp, right?
Right. A dirigible or Zeppelin. So the Hindenburg is the one that crashed. Okay. But there were a bunch of others. The United States one that crashed was the USS Acheron. Great Britain had the R101, which crashed. Germany had the Hindenburg. And then there was another one, I think was a Canadian one or something, that also crashed. So in the same year, all of these dirigibles crashed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's pretty crazy.
You're cursed.
The car Osborne drives in the race is a 1955 Ferrari 750 Monza Spyder. It is one of only 35 built, and the exact car sold at auction for over $2.5 million. In 2016, another example, a more famous one, sold for $5.2 million. What other famous film featured a Ferrari Spyder, at the end of which one of the characters kicks the car, resulting in its destruction?
Oh, man, I was looking up stuff for this, and I can't remember the name of the movie.
I'll give you a hint. So
similar time period?
Something like the 80s. So it was basically, so it's a later version of the Spyder. So it was a much later version of the Spyder, an 80s film. And the character is angry at his dad, who loves the car more than him, and kicks the car. And then it falls off of the thing that it's on and crashes through a window to its demise.
Oh,
is it like Ferris Bueller or something?
Day.
Ferris Bueller's was a Ferrari Spyder. Yeah.
Gotcha.
All right, and then finally, Phantom Zone.
Engage the Phantom.
Phantom's engaged, sir. So somehow, despite doing Phantom Zone Extraordinaire, or where I did like 100 films, this one didn't connect immediately, so I had to go through it. Gregory Peck is in a film called The Sea Wolves with Roger Moore. And it sounds kind of cool. It's about a bunch of old soldiers sent undercover to destroy a ship that they think is being used to send messages to U-boats. And of course, you can use Roger Moore to jump to a bunch of different submarine films. So that's one I'll use. Sea Wolves.
And then, I was looking at that movie. You think it's got some like decent sub action in it?
I don't know about decent sub action. The problem is that so it's about them
like their
trying
surface ships,
right? But then there's definitely a note that says at the end a U-boat surfaces. So it may be just the extent of that.
And then they reference the submarine pens a lot, but we only see a little bit of it at the very end.
And then the final question of Phantom Zone: where would Ed Harris be appropriately used in this film?
He'd be maybe cool as the Fred Astaire character.
I think so.
You think Fred Astaire?
Oh, yeah.
It's an interesting fact, too, because Ed Harris was actually briefly attached to the TV miniseries adaptation of the book that this ended up being made in 2000. But that time, when they were trying to make the miniseries, it fell through because Ed insisted that it actually be 24 parts, so it had been 24 hours long, and take place in real time. So it's like a ticking clock in the corner, 24 hours long. And he also changed the setting to modern day, and the plot was about a counter-terrorist unit, and his character would be attempting to prevent an assassination of a presidential candidate. So it became kind of a crazy thing. But I'm sure it would have been a massive hit in the end. Do you know what it was going to be called, by the way? That he changed the name of it. Do you know what it's going to be
called?
Ed's Day Out.
Close. It was called On the Beach with Ed Harris. And do you know why? Do you know why? Do you know why it was called On the Beach with Ed Harris? Do you know why?
Because it was on the beach with Ed Harris.
almost, again, very close. But it's because Ed, the entire movie, Ed is shirtless and greased up. And every time someone sees him, they're like, are you just coming from the beach? Because you're like shirtless and you're greased up. And he gets to use his catchphrase at that point. And his catchphrase is, no, but you're about to get on the beach with Ed Harris and let's pound some dweebs. So
there you go, man.
I got it through it that time without laughing.
You got it out. Sounded like I was in Jeopardy. Kind of stumbled a little
dweebs, baby.
Yeah, I forgot something with my review. Can I quickly jump back to that real quick?
Yeah, go for it. Sure.
I thought really the most touching moment was when he got back on the submarine and he was facing his men and he pulled out his dick and it was all like radioactive and gross. And they were like, you know what? We're all just men here. Like, you can put that away. And he put it away. But you could see in their eyes, they were like relieved because they're like, oh boy, did not look good.
Well, it was a pretty cool shot too, because it was just of his back, and then you hear him unzip his pants, and then there's just this giant glow coming from it.
And then it's bullet time around his back to finally show the scene.
Yeah, they use that same camera rig. You're like, oh my god,
it's pretty amazing.
Hell of a shot.
I thought you were going to say that they were going to be like, oh, we're all guys here. Feel free to continue to air that sucker out.
Yeah, or everybody just did it.
We're just human beings. No one's the captain here anymore. We're human beings.
They're like,
Listen.
And there's like one guy that's holding out that is still just like not wanting to whip it out because he's embarrassed, and they're like, there's still time, brother.
Right.
That's an On the Beach reference, guys.
It is.
Thank you for clarifying.
It's subs worldwide.
As you probably picked up as we've been going through the episode, today's Subs Worldwide doesn't feature subs at all.
Seems like a trend.
I know. We haven't done it in a while. I mean, I've done a lot of subs, guys. A lot. And the sub wasn't even the coolest vehicle in this movie. It was for sure Fred Astaire's 1955 750 Monza Spyder. Welcome to Ferraris Worldwide. So, as Jamie had mentioned, this is one of 35 cars, Monza Spyders, ever built, and it did sell for over $2.5 million at auction. So it was supposed to go for, people were thinking over $3.25. Maybe came up a little bit short, but whatever.
So this was an actual Monza Spyder, because when I mentioned the one from Ferris Bueller's, it was a mock because obviously they destroyed it, so it wasn't going to be a real Spyder.
Yeah, this is a real one. So that the car that he drove in this film was sold at auction. It's a real car. And back in the 1950s, Ferrari decided to introduce a new line of 4-cylinder cars that would compete in the World Championship for sports cars. And that started in 1953. They won their inaugural year. They came back, 1954, champions once again. 1955, they built the 750 Monza Spyder. They packed 250 horsepower into a 1,675-pound body. And as we saw in the movie, the model that he was driving was the Scagliettes. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that very incorrectly, which had the super cool headrest, built into the car. Not all the versions did. The car won its very first race, but ultimately could not hold off against the Mercedes 300 SLR in the World Championship for sports cars 1955. They came up short.